Hi, Brian King here. You ever had a conversation that went like this? How are you? I'm fine. Or things are going fine. Or things are just fine. Well, what the heck does fine mean? I did a recent training in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was working with a group of parents and teachers, and one subject that kept coming up was our use of language and how it was a reflection of our perception of the world that we all live in. They spoke repeatedly about what they were up against. They talked about the opposition and so forth. What was lacking was a mention of those working with them. There were a few people that talked about collaborative teams and working together, but that was the minority in the conversation. They pretty much just focused on what they were competing for. And I'm sure they were accurately describing their experience of the school system as it is. I mean, heaven knows I've had to deal with that mindset when advocating for my own kids. The danger lies in eventually succumbing to the "that's just the way it is" philosophy of helplessness. You give up seeking opportunities for change and resign yourself to the way things are. So that brings us back to the word fine. Is this a word that you use often? What does fine mean to you when you answer the question, how you're doing, and you say, I'm fine? When I ask this question, some respond, well, fine means that things are good. Well, then say things are good. Don't say things are fine. Good is a lot more concrete than fine. The word fine sounds neutral at best. The word good sounds more pleasing. So why am I so preoccupied with this word fine? Because when you really examine the circumstances under which it's used, you'll discover that using the word fine is actually a dodge. It's to avoid something. It's a way to respond to a question without giving a definitive answer. Either you don't want to think about how you're actually doing, or you don't want the person asking the question to know how you're doing. When I speak to parents of children on the autism spectrum, that I refer to as spectrumites, and they tell me things are going fine, I ask them to elaborate. What I discover is that they are tolerating their present situation. So many parents are grateful for a day without a crisis or a meltdown, and when there is no crisis, things are fine. Okay, there's no crisis, but there's also no progress. So many parents mistakenly believe progress has been made because there hasn't been a crisis in a while. When I ask them how they think that happened, I hear, well, we keep things very structured, or we keep a tight lid on things so our child doesn't become too overwhelmed. I hear this from teachers also. I think we're making progress. Your child hasn't acted out or talked back to a teacher in a while. I feel we have a good plan in place. I hear that a lot in IEP meetings. So what's the problem here? The problem is that all these parents and teachers have managed to do is meticulously control the spectrumite's environment in order to minimize the number of things for the spectrumite to react to. Did you get that? All they've done is remove the triggers. Then when a trigger happens to slip through, such as a substitute teacher who has no clue who does and doesn't have an IEP in the classroom, or a parent having a bad day and is a bit short-tempered with their child, the result is a child who becomes upset, melts down, or in some other way acts out. This is often perceived as a child regressing. Point of order here. You can only regress if you move forward at some point in the first place. The spectrumite didn't make progress. They've been stagnating the whole time because of what I call reactive parenting. Reactive parenting has several components to it. The first one is you have a parent that waits until the child is in crisis to get help. Then once the crisis passes, the parent stops getting help. Why? Because everything is fine now. You have a reactive child. A child that lives their life as though life is happening to them, instead of seeing themselves as an active member of their own life. Then there's reactive problem solving. This is when schools and parents go out of their way to remove the spectrumite from the decision-making process in order to prevent reactions that would result in a crisis that they'd have to deal with. This results in a perpetual pattern of rescuing and enabling a spectrumite because Either their problems are being solved for them, or problems are prevented from occurring in the first place. So when you tell yourself a child appears to be managing and coping well, it's often because you sterilize the child's environment so much, there's actually nothing to cope with. So what do we do instead? Ultimately, each person succeeds in life by being able to solve their own problems or by knowing how problems get solved. When you know how the problem gets solved but have difficulty implementing all the steps, you ask for help in implementing them. It's essential to develop a partnership with your child or student that requires you to solve the problem with them instead of for them. This teaches them interdependence instead of dependence. It empowers them to find solutions instead of always avoiding problems. It helps them to make progress instead of fearing what lies ahead in life. They fear what lies ahead when their life happens to them and see it as something to defend against and react to. They embrace life more easily when they learn to navigate it with another person who helps them reflect upon their life, upon the situation, the problems that show up, the solutions available, and then works with them to implement those solutions. Bottom line, if things are fine, you're stuck, and so is your child. If you want progress, then you must be clear on how your situation actually is. Is it good? Great. Could it be better? Most importantly, what is your child's role in the progress that was made? If your child has no measurable role, scrap your plan and start over. What will your new plan look like? And remember, we're all in this together. So please share your thoughts on this. What was your new plan going to be? And please share this with others as well. This is Brian King. Talk to you soon.